hope that the students feel a sense of accomplishment. I hope they feel proud about what they created. I hope they feel like they, really can do anything.
I want to dance for the rest of my life because I've been doing it up until now, so I still want to do it forever.
You taught me this in Dance 1, that dance is like a universal language.
And over time, I've really realized that my role here has become not necessarily teaching them about the art form of dance, but using dance as a way to understand yourself in the world. And when you understand yourself, then you are able to do more.
So I can say personally, the connection you have with your students and that you want them to do better. You want them to push. You don't want them to fall like under any category. You want them to push forward, and her sense of being a community, I'm about to cry. You can really see that. You want to be a community and you push for that. You push for your students so they can have a community. I told you dance ensemble is family. So you push for that. You push for the family. You push for us being together, even though times may be hard, the being there, present in time and space, was really something that I appreciate.
Life is gonna go back to normal, and what you gonna do when you look back from 4 years in high school and you know you didn't still push yourself?
Enjoy the moments, enjoy what you have, be here, be grateful for what you have, because we couldn't have done this, we didn't have to do this, or we were probably wouldn't be able to do this.
COVID kind of makes you do things you don't want to do, or forces you outside of your comfort zone a little bit.
Be open, be different. It's okay to not just think everything's gonna be one way. It's okay to change.
I grow every day, so it's not like I'm just stuck in one position. I've learned a lot about myself through this whole experience.
It takes confidence to be a leader, to be able to step out in front of people and say, this is the way that this should be done. Because you have to be able to take criticism from people that doing that as well, because everyone's looking to you.
If you ask for things, if you are open and you're willing to put yourself out there just a little bit, that things will come to you.
Challenges do not change who you are. They reveal who you are. And what this has revealed is that during this time of great challenge, creativity still happens. Creativity still emerges. And that has been a very cool thing. So this challenge has not changed who we are, it's just revealed who we are.
I used to get calls all the time from people asking me about the station. What kind of music do you play? And the canned format was adult album alternative. And so I asked the music director, what does that actually mean? And he said, we play the good stuff. That was the end of his explanation.
Well, AAA music is heavy on the singer-songwriters and the Americana, but we also include blues music, jazz, other styles like world music.
It's not the same songs every other hour. And in 90.5's case, it's not even the same songs each week.
WCB is pretty unique with all the variety of music that we can play and the variety of shows that we have.
We've had John Prine, Ziggy Marley, Warren Haynes from the Allman Brothers. We have had Tedeschi Trucks. The list goes on and on.
The thing that we have at WCBE is experts in music that know where the good stuff is.
Homemade, locally produced programming is what we're all about, and just sort of sitting there and grooving out in a radio station, knowing that I'm doing the same thing with thousands of listeners across the state. I really dig that. I dig that sort of concept.
We're all over the map. It's great music. You know, people that go, oh, I listen to everything. If you listen to everything, all you need to do is listen to us.
This has been a very powerful project. And as we come to a place where the work is not done, the work is still ever present, but as it's nearing the end, I'm thinking, wow, we did something, and we didn't know if we were going to be able to do anything. I just feel so proud, you know. I think I said it already, but this group is really special, and it will never happen again the way that it happened this year with this group of people. And I think I just feel really proud. And yeah, it was emotional though. I mean, and exciting. I mean, they kept saying to me, this feels so different. This feels so different. You know, we're performing with no one in the theater. I'm asking them to dance so big with no one watching except for the four of us. And they did it, you know? So I'm happy. You know, the curtain is closed and they took their final bows, and that was it. So watching them on stage was everything to me, because I didn't know if that would ever happen this year, and it was very emotional. I cried.
I feel complete. Like, my senior year has been complete. Like, even if I didn't get to do anything else, prom, graduation, or whatnot, I still wanted to dance at Fort Hays at least one more time, be on the stage with the lights at least one more time. That's all I was hoping for from the beginning of the school year.
I'm really happy I got to do something. I really thought, I'm like, there's no way that I could.
I'm mostly proud of myself for being able to like stick to something and like do good and like be around people who are also doing good.
Dance sometimes is just made to look effortless. Like, you're not meant to see the pain. You're meant to see the beauty of it. So that's something as dancers that we pride ourselves on, of making it look effortless as much as we can.
And this is the thing about dance, is it's you on the stage. Yes, you can play a character, but it's your body and your expressivity. It takes a heck of a lot of vulnerability. And that's a big ask for young people.
Even in the midst of a pandemic that we've never seen before, even in the midst of great tragedies that we have not seen before, the students at Fort Hays, the students in Columbus, the teachers, the staff, we all still rise up.
We sit here and we're like, we're saying, hey, track can be this vehicle. Coach, I want to turn to you now. You talked about the golden years, Coach Morgan. What did track do for you? What did the experience do for you? And tell us a little bit about your post-high school experiences and then what you've grown and learned maybe from some of that.
Sure. So like I said, track and field is one of those sports where there's not many opportunities past the collegiate level.
Okay.
So making it to whatever college of your choice or whatever level of collegiate competition is kind of like your plateau, unless you're the Allison Felixes and Steiner. Okay. So I always kind of noticed that if track was the sport that I was going to try to excel in, that I needed a backup plan. So my focus was always academics first. Okay. And then using the track as that vehicle to pay for school.
Right, of course.
Because I wasn't born in money.
That's all right.
Also, track, a lot of universities, if you're not at the top universities in the nation, then track also only gets partial scholarship. And then you have to prove your merit to get work up to a full scholarship. So I was able to go to school on half track, half academic scholarship.
Nice.
However, I seen it as my vehicle. I knew that I couldn't just go to college and major in just anything. I had to major in something that would, set me up for a promising future.
Certainly.
So track was that vehicle that I used to, I majored in computer science and engineering.
Nice.
And I was supposed to take 5 years, but I took 4 because even in collegiate sports, they pay for your summer school as well.
Okay.
So I stayed on campus and trained during the summer, but I also took courses to complete my coursework in 4 years rather than 5.
Coach Anthony, you get to hang out with some special people, man. I don't know if you realize how phenomenal these two young women are. I don't want to steal her thunder yet. Hold on. I want to let her keep going. But I mean, wow, these are some phenomenal people you're getting to hang around. I'm sorry, go ahead. So you finished in 4.
Yeah. And from there, your track. So not to mention engineering coupled with, track meets every weekend and lifting and practice and things like that. So
lifting people when you participate in sports, lifting is part of it. You don't have to be a weightlifter. Getting stronger is part of it. Go ahead. So you're lifting, you're doing all these things.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
So you learn time management and things like that. It's just all kinds of skills that you cannot pay to learn.
Certainly.
So I always
That's the beauty of sports.
Encourage my girls to try to compete on the next level, even if they don't think they're the best. They don't think it of themselves.
Right.
I'm not even talking track anymore. I'm talking life.
Yeah.
You learn time management, how to prioritize.
Certainly.
Different things that you need to do. And so that's kind of what I mean by track being a vehicle. No, it wasn't my end all be all. I'm not in the Olympics. I did not have the talent to be in the Olympics, but I feel like track offered me things that I could not pay for in a college.
A platform, you know what I mean, for life, a vault, you know what I mean, a starting block, right?
Even being here today.
Come on, I got all sorts of puns like that, Kaden, a starting block, right? Yes, indeed. No, I think that's beautiful. Your journey, I'm blessed to hear it today, right? I'm honored to hear your experiences. You even gave me a lot to think about, just because sometimes when you've been in this a long time, like coaching, I don't know coach's history. I'm 25 years in education in Columbus City, and every once in a while you need to be refreshed. What you've shared today has been very refreshing. I'll share that for you. Coach, I'm going to allow you to give some quick lasting thoughts. They're giving me the signal over there that says I got to start to get ready for outro, and you're going to say your lasting piece, but we always let the current, right? We always let our future get the final word. So you'll share something here, and then I'll turn it over here to Kaden before I do the outro.
Okay, I'm going to get ready to get into my DJ voice right now so I can get it all in. I know I'm going to get to cutting a little bit.
Yes, indeed.
I can be loquacious too like her. Okay, what you said to Kim, I knew about Kim, about what she does and how good she was. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised with anything. And I know there's even more that we don't know.
Right.
Also, too, the time management thing is bigger than the clock right here, too. You have to be, we teach them to be prepared. We want them to be disciplined. We want them to be focused, okay? And those are not just words that we put out there. That's what something you need to be, okay? Be that. And I just want to thank God for the opportunity to coach the young ladies. And I like to thank, God for their families too.
Nice.
God, family, and then what we do, that comes in third.
There you go. I love it. All right,
definitely comes in third.
We're gonna turn it to you, Kaden. You get the last words here today before I read the outro.
That's perfectly fine with me. So I first want to say thank you to the coaches for everything. For the last 2 years that I had, they've been amazing. And thank you for the production that we're doing now.
Nice, okay.
And just want to say something to everyone that's listening now, or like the high schoolers that are listening now, like you mentioned earlier.
Okay.
If you start something, make sure you finish it, because 9 times out of 10, you're amazing at what you're doing. You just don't know.
I love that. That's a great way for us to end today. Steadfast, right? Steadfast is the energy for today. I'm going to read the outro. I got another look over there. They're nice looks, but there still was another look, right? So that
can I just tell you what our theme song is?
Certainly.
What it is, we call them My Girls.
My Girls.
We got sunshine on a cloudy day.
My Girls.
Championship is in the month of May.
There you go.
Well,
I love that right there. Hey, you know that? I love that right there. We're going to get to this outro here. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you for listening. Much respect to you all as our guests here this morning. Appreciate you being here. Be sure to catch all future episodes on radio WCBE 90.5. Also, catch us on Spotify, Apple, or the platform you prefer to listen to your favorite podcast. Additionally, follow us on Instagram at City League Sports 614. I am your host, Vince Clarino. This is City League Sports, and we are out.
I'm Abrielle. I'm in 8th grade, and I was wondering, how do you work yourself through a situation where somebody is doubting you because you are a woman?
Someone's doubting you because you are a woman. I think affirmations, what you were saying, Chief Potts, I mean, I think that plays a really big role. And, you know, affirmations start with, it's not just a mantra about how to see the world, but it's a mantra of belief in yourself. So some of the, you know, the best affirmations that I use with myself, or I was talking about kind of that script I tell myself, is they're really personal, right? They're not something I can tell myself every day, but they're really personal. And when I'm feeling particularly like there's a particular challenge or someone's doubting me, especially because I'm a woman, although I can never see in their heads exactly why they're doubting me, they could be doubting me because they're jealous, right? I'm being a little facetious here, but you know, I mean, you can feel like maybe they're doubting me because I'm a woman, or you could feel like maybe they're doubting me because they know that I'm powerful, they know that I'm smart, they know that, right? And that's a kind of script, that's a kind of affirmation where it's about reorienting the problem to recognize your power in surmounting it. It's a bit of a nebulous answer, but I do think so much can come back to how we think about our approach to a problem.
I think the affirmations are critically important. I had to do a kind of a self-painting with an organization that I'm on the board of. We had like a fun time of painting ourselves, and we were supposed to write affirmations, and the ones that came to me is, I am strong, I am blessed, and I am empowered. And so, you know, just say something simple like that every day to yourself, or when you're in a challenging situation or doubting yourself.
And I will give you this advice, especially if it's in your face that you know it's because you're a woman. You confront that man, and you tell him what your accolades are. You tell him where you've been and what you bring to the table, and then he can either take it or leave it. But it's not going to stop you from doing the work that you're sent here to do. And so, eventually, even those who doubt you will see your greatness. And so sometimes you have to confront it, and other times you just let your work speak for itself. And eventually they'll come around.
Sorry, just to add, I know I already spoke, but to add on to that, it's kind of like you will prove them wrong. And I want to cite again the Ketanji Brown Jackson hearings last week, because that's what was happening. She was being doubted because of who she is, right? Because she is a woman, because she is a Black woman. She was being doubted for those specific reasons. And a couple different things happened. First of all, she showed them her power. She spoke powerfully. She proved how unquestionably qualified she is for the role of Supreme Court Justice. And what also happened is people surrounded her with their belief in her, right? So she found folks in the room that did believe in her, that were willing to come. Not that she needed rescued, but everyone needs an aid, right? Everyone needs help. Everyone needs fortified. And obviously Senator Cory Booker's speech will go down in history, I think, as one of really meeting someone where she needs you at that moment, where she needs fortified. So again, her hearings are on my mind and hold so many lessons, I think, for each of us in our own little daily lives.
I think that everything that they've said, maybe a little twist, and it kind of, Dr. Dixon's earlier comments made me think of this. You know, I think we've kind of painted this as a male-female thing, but I'll tell you, sometimes the biggest challenges I've had in my career have been other women. And in particular, women who may be of a different generation than I am, and maybe had to come through things in a little bit of a different way than I did. And it goes back to Dr. Dixon's point, and we're not lost here. We're at an all-girls school, right? It is tough out there for girls, and the last thing we need is for another girl to not have our backs, right? And so, in those situations, I almost find that a little bit harder to deal with, because I'm like, wait a minute, shouldn't we be helping each other out? But, then, trying to just come back, and for me, it's about trying to understand them, understand their story, understand why they have this perspective, and then try to approach it differently. And then in the end, just prove them wrong. But, it isn't always a male-female thing. Sometimes it can be a girl-on-girl issue.
I worked in commercial radio for 40 years. When I arrived in the Columbus market, WCBE was my go-to station when I was not producing another radio show for my employer. Don't tell them that. I volunteered my services. 9 years later, I find myself as the general manager for the station that I love, that is near and dear to me.
My name's Mike Taylor, and I'm a radio broadcast specialist. That's what they're calling me these days. A lot of the artists we play will not be played on any other radio station in Central Ohio, maybe not even in the country. So when we find someone we like, we try to get them on the air, we try to get them into Studio A.
My name is Allison Holm. I'm the afternoon news anchor and reporter, and I've been at WCBE for 25 years. We once had, when I was on doing the newscast, we had the monitor start smoking and catch on fire. And I was in the middle of a newscast, and I couldn't stop. And so I had to wait until I had a sound bite and run to the door and shout out, "The studio's on fire!" and then run back in to finish that story and then go into the next one. So I'm pretty good about ignoring distractions.
My name is Maggie Brennan. I've been with WCBE since my internship since 1993. We'll be excited to have more kids involved and more programming with that, whether they're going to be hosting some of the shows or behind the scenes, or even some of the bands playing live in Studio A.
It's a nice, wholesome place where you can see how the radio gets made. I've been involved with the station since I was a teenager. Around 14 years old was the first time that I went in and did any volunteer work for them. The people who work there know their stuff and make a really great environment for a learning opportunity.
Before I came to WCBE, I was a professional jazz musician. And then I got a job at Fort Hays. On my first day of teaching, I ran out the door and I ran next door and I knocked on the door and I went and I said, "Who's playing that stuff? That is really cool." And then the secretary said, "I think you need to go in the back." So she let me in the back, and the next thing he was going to play was a piece of jazz music, and I have an encyclopedic knowledge of it. So I started telling him exciting things about the thing he was about to play. He said, "Wait just a minute." And he put a mic in front of my face, and for about 10 years then, I was Jim, the wacky sitcom neighbor next door. And I would just barge into people's radio shows and start talking.
It, number one, gave me an opportunity to reunite with Jim Manieri, who I knew from when he was in college and I worked at another radio station. And as a matter of fact, I hadn't had that type of conversation about music probably in 10, 15 years. That's one of the reasons why I do this.
So fun. I mean, I'm a radio girl anyways, but I also am the receptionist, so I get to greet them, bring them into the station, welcome them, and Chris Robinson Brotherhood came through, and Chris Robinson, I just love the Black Crowes, so meeting him, I was kind of geeking out a little bit.
I'm in my 23rd year, and probably the last handful have been the most rewarding and fulfilling. That combination that I love of music and story, the sort of story behind the music, that's a really good combination. When a listener says that they value that and they got something from that and they now are a fan of that artist, that is truly inspiring.
I've had a long relationship with WCBE. Years ago, I started a little show called Cinema Classics with a buddy of mine, John DeSando, and we've been talking about movies on there for years. And then the opportunity came up. There was a job opening, and I thought, wow, I love this place. I love the people that work there. I love the vibe there.
I still feel that it is a group of people who are making this all happen. And we're all counting on each other and building on what each other does. And that's an unusual and awesome experience.
Well, greetings to all of our elementary staff, both our principals and our teachers. I bring you greetings from our superintendent, Dr. Dixon, and our Chief of Transformation and Leadership, Angela Chapman, who you will also hear from. We are excited to celebrate you on your wonderful accomplishment of meeting the interim literacy goal. We have made a significant investment in you, both in our resources and in our instructional processes through our foundations, our letters, our HMH and Hagerty and Just Words. And we know that it takes not only implementation fidelity, but also instructional fidelity to meet goals and move the needle forward. We celebrate you. We recognize you, we honor you, and we appreciate you. Have a wonderful day.
It is my pleasure and honor to recognize our staff, teachers, and leaders for their collective work in supporting early literacy. We celebrate our teachers for your willingness to embrace research-based literacy practices, providing grade-level curriculum to students and the necessary scaffolds that students need to be successful. For our principals, we commend you for maintaining a laser-like focus on literacy in your schools. Because of your efforts, we are narrowing achievement gaps in early literacy, meeting and exceeding goals for our youngest literacy learners. As a district, we are building a strong foundation for our students that will set them up for success in school and beyond. In essence, the culmination of our curricular changes are addressing what the National Reading Panel indicated was needed more than 25 years ago. But without the right people in the right places, none of this would be occurring. Thank you for being the right teachers and leaders for our students and our community. Because of your work, we are transforming what an urban school district can be in CCS, and we thank you for your efforts.
are actually coming out of our special meeting, and so I will need a motion to adjourn that meeting.
Motion to adjourn executive session.
There's been a motion and a second. We are now adjourned, and I would now like to call our regular business meeting to order on today, February 21st. Please call the roll.
President Adair?
Present.
Ms. Beckerly?
Present.
Mr. Brown? Here. Mr. Cole, I know he's in the hallway, but we'll have to mark him absent for now. Dr. Pierce?
Present.
Ms. Reyes?
Here.
And Vice President Vera?
Here.
You have a quorum, Madam President?
Thank you. Will you please stand and join me in the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, board members, on today's agenda, we have one speaker here for public comment. We are expecting a report from our superintendent's office, no report from internal audit or treasurer. We have a couple items on board matters, including a monitoring report. We have our consent agenda, and we have a new second consent agenda that we will hear more about. We have no public comment on non-agenda items. We will have an executive session after the meeting, and then we will adjourn.
Motion to approve our agenda for this evening.
There's been are there any additions? Seeing none and without objection, the agenda is approved. So we will hear right now public comment. We have President Nana Watson from the NAACP, who's joining us live. Topic, personnel and new security system action. I would like the board to share the process for selecting the search firm for the superintendent. Tell me if there was a bid process for selecting the company that will do security in the schools. Yes. Good evening, President Watson.
Well, good evening, President Adair, board members, and Interim Superintendent Chapman. You know, on behalf of the NAACP, we acknowledge and appreciate the correspondence from President Adair respective to our previous inquiries. However, there remain several unanswered questions for which we seek clarity. The questions are, what services are being provided by the former superintendent? What type of coaching is being provided? And what does this have to do with the district? Is the former superintendent working from a virtual location, or is she housed at the district to provide her coaching services? In addition, there are several other questions remaining in general that I want to share with you. The first deals with the selection of the law firm. Was there an RFP issued to acquire the legal services? If so, when and who responded? What was the basis for the selection? Has there been or will there be an RFP issued to select a search firm? If so, when will same be advertised? If not, what criteria will be used as a basis of selection? Will there be a selection committee, and how will the services be paid? Okay, I'll move on. We want you to know that we, as you, want our students to be securely protected and safe at all times. So we fully endorse and support the need for a dedicated program of this nature that you're using, Evolve Express. Our questions resolve not around the necessity, but the procurement process. Our assumption is that an RFP was issued to retain Evolve services. Please elaborate on the selection details and procurers regarding that process. A critique of Evolve's website indicates that there are no Black employees in leadership roles. Neither is there a readily noticeable DEI commitment or statement. Assuming that the district declared racism as a public health crisis, as endorsed by other public-funded Franklin County agencies, it might be prudent to advise CCS's safety director upon your verification of his statement to refrain from using the word "our people" as recently quoted in the Columbus Dispatch? Lastly, what department within the district is actively monitoring the contracts to ensure procurement allocations of equitable diverse spends? Is LED participation enforced? What distinguishes features determining the basis of issuance of POs and/or contracts? Looking forward to receiving the answers to those questions as always. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, President Watson, for your continued advocacy on behalf of the NAACP, and we will be getting back with you on the answers to your questions. All right, let's go ahead and turn it over to our interim superintendent, Dr. Chapman.
Thank you, President Adair, members of the board. I have a few brief updates to share with the board tonight. February is CTE, or Career and Technical Education Month, and a great time to highlight all the great things our CTE students are doing. Our CTE programs are critical for getting students business ready for the modern workplace. Additionally, I want to congratulate 26 of our CTE students who will advance to the Business Professionals of America state competition taking place in March. There were more than 65 students attending Fort Hays Career Center and Columbus Downtown High School who put their business skills to the test during the BPA Regional Leadership Competition in January. Of that number, 26 students qualified for the state competition in March, while nearly 40 students placed in various categories. These categories included business law and ethics, fundamentals of desktop publishing, podcasting production, and interviewing skills. Best of luck to the state qualifiers. Getting students business ready is a vital priority, but to get to that point, we need to build a strong foundation by creating a literacy landscape across our community. Accomplishing this is a community effort that includes families and the many relationships cultivated to support our literacy work. Future Ready and United Way are just a couple of the community organizations that help create this literacy landscape. If it impacts the well-being of our children, we support it and create relationships. Additionally, through Scholastic and Bookalicious, we have put hundreds of thousands of books in the hands of our students over the past 2 years. We also continue to work with numerous organizations such as the Columbus Metropolitan Library and Nationwide Children's Hospital to deliver resources to families, prepare future CCS students for success, and increase access to literacy-related resources throughout the greater Columbus community. Getting students excited about reading by themselves and as families is a big reason why we started the Together We Read initiative. This work has led to campaigns such as our virtual story time, which features guest readers who make up our district, including students, teachers, and members of safety and security. Board Vice President Christina Vera even joined us a few weeks ago to tape on an episode, and we have more special guest readers planned for this school year. We've seen some of the impacts already of these investments. Literacy is vital to student success and builds the skills they will need in the future. Like literacy, attendance is also one of the district's key priorities. We're continuing to make progress toward improving chronic absenteeism with several initiatives at work to get kids excited to come to school each day. The most visible effort, especially in this past week, is the Stay in the Game partnership with the Columbus Crew. By now, I hope you've had a chance to see one of the 14 digital billboards across the city promoting our partnership, with reminders that to be a champion, you have to be on time to school each and every day. We're also in the middle of our Stay in the Game to Go to the Game incentive campaign with our middle school students. 6th, 7th, and 8th graders with good attendance in February will be entered into a drawing next week for tickets to the Columbus Crew home opening soccer matches. Perhaps most exciting last week was the Attend Dance Day on Thursday, when middle school classrooms paused at 10 a.m. to dance and celebrate attendance. Our friends from the Crew, including the Crew Cat mascot, danced with students at Starling. There are a few events coming up where we will join the crew. Next week, we will celebrate Black and Gold Day in CCS, encouraging everyone to wear black and gold as we count down to the crew's home opening match. Also look for a high-energy clap-in with the crew, a special event for our bus drivers, and more to honor this impactful campaign. Learning doesn't have to stop at the end of the school year. Summer Experience is back with all the fun and unique learning experiences along with some new opportunities thanks to parents' feedback. Summer Experience officially kicks off June 20th and families can register through the parent portal starting on March 15th. This program is free and open to all pre-K through 12th grade Columbus City Schools students. The program will strengthen foundational knowledge and skills and include similar project-based learning that students have enjoyed through our Pathway Express. Summer experience pathways include entrepreneurship, family and consumer science, fine arts, STEM, world languages and culture, and new areas of focus such as health and wellness. Thanks to the feedback from our CCS families, there will be some additional opportunities available for elementary through high school. This year's summer experience for elementary and middle school runs Monday through Friday from June 20th to July 14th. Extended care will also be available at elementary schools this year, but space is limited. So parents, that means we have to make sure we sign up quickly. Additionally, all high schools will now offer summer experience virtually with some face-to-face classes available at select school sites. Programs include credit recovery and advancement opportunities. Additionally, high school students can enroll at Spruce Run to participate in special programs where they will earn high school credit. Summer experience runs for high schools Monday through Thursday, June 20th through July 28th. Lastly, we have an important update this evening on safety in our schools. We are set to launch a multi-million-dollar package of safety investments, including the recent installation of a high-tech scanner and detection system at our high school entrances. Our Director of Safety and Security, Chris Baker, is here tonight to share this update. As you will hear from Mr. Baker, while we invest resources to significantly enhance our security measures, we are also committed to authentically engaging all stakeholders in our school community with clear, honest conversations about these safety investments, the reasons behind them, and the expectations we have for everyone who is a part of keeping our schools safe. The new state-of-the-art safety detection systems will be operational in our high schools by the end of this week for daily screenings of every student who enters during the day for all of our high schools. These innovative scanners use artificial intelligence and sensor technology to instantly distinguish a phone or personal item from a potential weapon. This technology is quick and can scan 10 times faster than a traditional metal detector, reducing the long lines and wait times and complaints of being late to class that many of our students have experienced. Now I'll invite Mr. Baker to the table so he can tell us more about our enhanced safety measures.
Good evening. Thank you, President Adair, Vice President Vera, other members of the board, Interim Superintendent Dr. Chapman. My name is Chris Baker. I am the Director of Safety and Security. And I'm here to provide some updates and information that we're doing in the Office of Safety and Security. As stated, we have some goals that we're trying to achieve in our office. Our number one goal is the safety of our students and our staff. Change in our processes will continue to make an overall effect and change the landscape of what we've been doing in our schools. Today was a new day, and we're happy about the direction that we're going. As Dr. Chapman said, we will be doing daily screenings at our high schools. Every single day, visitors, parents, students will be screened every day when they enter our schools. Other safety and security enhancements that I'll talk about today is the Evolve detection system, as well as other vulnerability assessments that my team and the other school administrators are conducting at our schools. Those vulnerability assessments not only at the high school level, but our middle school, K-8, as well as our elementary schools, and I will explain further in that. Other improvements and enhancements that we're making is utilizing the funds that we received from the K-12 safety grant, the funds that were announced to us this past August from the governor's office, as well as a newly created security task force that we will be putting together. We have a short video to show you that will give you some information as it relates to our Evolve implementation video.
Columbus City Schools is taking proactive measures to ensure a safe learning environment for students and staff. Evolve Express state-of-the-art advanced detection systems have been installed in district high school buildings.
Today is one of our scheduled professional development days, but at the same time we are rolling out our new enhanced security screening detection systems with Evolve technologies. So today our staff are also being trained on how to utilize the systems.
The Evolve Express detection system combines powerful sensor technology with artificial intelligence to ensure a safe and more accurate threat detection.
Currently, the system will be set up primarily for our students and any visitors that enter in our schools, and this will be a daily process.
The way the Evolve system works is as students or visitors walk through the system, it is looking for items or items of concern. And if there is an item of concern, a potential weapon, the system will alert and take a picture of that individual and put a box on that location. It's not looking at the individuals, it's looking at the items that go through. So there's no bias in the system.
If a suspicious item is discovered on an individual, a light on the machine will flash red. That person will go through a secondary screening process conducted by safety and security personnel. This detection system is the latest model created by the Massachusetts-based safety technology company, which can screen 4,000 people an hour.
The Evolve technology system does not use any facial recognition, it does not keep any personal information, and it's looking at items going through the system, not the people.
The crowd screening technology is used worldwide in healthcare establishments, industrial workplaces, sports arenas and stadiums, including used by the Columbus Crew at Laura.com Field.
There are over 200 schools around the U.S. using the Evolve technology to keep their kids safe and to keep their teachers safe.
The district has spent $3 million worth of federal elementary and secondary school emergency COVID relief funds to lease 20 Evolve Express systems over a 4-year period, and will continue to work with Evolve to provide updates to the system on emerging threats.
And if there's a new threat out there, our technical team will get the threat, test the system, and then update or upgrade the system. And that's what the artificial intelligence software is built to do. And those upgrades are continually provided to our customers as part of the overall system.
The Evolve systems will be used at extracurricular activities and sporting events to ensure continued safety.
This is a multi-layer system that we will ensure that we are doing the best thing that we can do to quickly identify at the beginning of the school day if any student are bringing in any dangerous weapons that can harm themselves or others. Thank you. So the video shows the advanced system and how it works in our schools. Prior to us getting into this process and agreement, we were able to have a couple of demonstrations at 2 of our high schools. We had a demonstration at Lyndon McKinley STEM Academy on October the 14th, and then we had an additional screening at Whetstone High School on November the 3rd. So during those opportunities, we were able to see if this system really works and is beneficial for us to screen and detect any weapons or threats that are brought into the school, at the same time allowing our students to process quickly and to get to class on time. So we were excited about what we were able to see, and that's why we continue to proceed with that process. And as it was stated on the video, we have the most up-to-date technology that they offer. And anytime there's any software updates, we automatically receive that as it is equipment that we can get immediately to update the systems and have all the updated software. some of the timelines that we've gone through in dealing with our safe entrance screening. Again, like I said, we had the demonstrations. There was board approval for this technology that was done on December the 20th. We began our messaging to our building administrators and our families on the 14th of this month. As the video show, we had our training during our professional development day at East High School on Friday the 17th, where we also invited senior staff members, the media as well, to get a firsthand look on this technology and its intended use for our schools. And again, this week we have a rollout that began with 6 schools per day that we are implementing the process, screening it, getting an opportunity to find any issues that may come up as we roll through before we go to full implementation on next week. Again, these are some of the actual photos, and right here to the side here, you see the actual unit. This unit here that's in the room is a single unit that we will use at some of our smaller schools. Most of our high schools have a dual lane system with 2 conveyor belts on each side that the students come in, and they lay their Chromebooks on the conveyor, which rolls it down, and they can keep everything on their person, and they walk through the system as you saw in the demonstration. If anything alerts them, they are again pulled for the additional screening that takes place for them. So again, this is part of our primary prevention methods that we're trying to implement within our schools. Again, I was fortunate enough to spend some time at Eastmoor Academy this morning, watching the system. The smiles on some of the students' faces that came in, they were like, wow, thank God this is working. I don't have to stand outside, you know, hey, all you need is my Chromebook. I don't have to take my phone out. I'm like, no, just walk on through. And they thought they still had to get screened again. I was like, nope, you're good, go into class. And we actually had a couple kids say, man, I'm not even gonna miss first period today. And that was amazing. I mean, just to have the students saying that, you know, I'm not gonna be late today because we're getting screened. We didn't have any major issues found, no weapons or anything that was brought into the schools today. So again, today for us, I would say was a good day for the 6 schools that we went into line today. And as you see on the screen today, we started with Columbus Global Academy, East High School, International, Eastmoor, Mifflin, South, and West High School. Tomorrow we will go into Beechcroft High School, Briggs, Lyndon McKinley, Marion Franklin, Walnut Ridge, and Westone, and so forth down the line through the end of the week. This still gives our staff an opportunity to work through any particular bugs or things that they realize they can do better. Again, the overall goal is to continue to deter those students from wanting to bring any dangerous weapons into the building. And today I can say we believe that the students are getting the message. The students appreciate what has happened today. Tonight, we are having these units used at our schools that are hosting first round of the Ohio High School basketball. So the families and the fans that are coming in today, they're walking through this technology as well. So it is working. I did check in on a couple schools, and there's some different logistics that are happening from what previously was happening, but no one is complaining. Everybody appears to be happy on making those adjustments for safe entry to even the athletic events. So we're happy with that. One of the wonderful things that the system also provides us is data. And again, we know data can be utilized for whatever we want it to be. So, you know, it shows us some data that we have from Eastmoor Academy today. This is a snapshot of the data that was able to be presented for the first hour of the day. We were able to screen 787 kids. And when you see where it says total alerts, that means the system is doing what it is designed to do. It's saying that there is something that we need to take a second look at. Not necessarily a weapon, but there's something that we need to take a look at. And then throughout the process, you know, our staff are trained at, you know, once they do that secondary screening, they can actually clear the alert that says we know what it is. It's an umbrella. And there's an actual button on the tablet that they can press that'll clear that. Yet we've identified what the alert is, and they can press that, and it gives us some different data. And working with our data team, we'll be able to present different things for you as time goes on. The second slide also just shows you a snapshot of the number of visitors or students that we screened today in 1 hour. There was 3,567 people we were able to screen within an hour at those 6 schools that were in line today to become operational and through their training. So again, we're able to, the system is doing what we want it to do. It is a deterrent, it's preventing the students from coming in, and it's helping us identify some of the items that some of the students are bringing in. A lot of students that were there, I had an opportunity to laugh with some of them this morning. The guy was standing, he said, "Sir, I have nothing." I said, "Well, something's alerting, alarming your bag, something's sending an alert." He said, "Well, it's probably all this candy I got, and it's a whole bunch of pieces of aluminum wrapped in candy." I said, "Yeah, that could be it." So he took it out, and he said, "Can I walk through again?" I said, "Absolutely." He said, "Yep." And I said, "What is that?" He said, "My deodorant." He said, "I got to stay fresh after gym class." I mean, so they were kind of engaging and having a good time with it, and so was I. So I was glad that they were happy and working with us and providing us some assistance in making this work. So I'm happy to report that as well. Part of the additional safety for me is a safer school piece is getting out into the buildings and doing vulnerability assessments, looking at key areas and seeing what are some of our failures or some of the things that we can do better. So recently we had our staff go out and do a full assessment at all of our high schools on doors, door control vulnerabilities, to actually get a total count of how many doors, exterior doors, that we have in our schools that lead directly to the outside. You've seen some of our reports where we've had students push doors open and allow others in to cause damage within our schools. So our systems now, what we're doing is our future state is we're going to assure, if you look at the picture, we're going to have a D-Tex, which is a screecher alarm put on all those exterior doors. So once we're in the school, we know that we have secured the school. Anyone that attempts to bypass or breach that area, the system will set an alarm that everybody will hear, and we will respond accordingly. We're also looking at the future state on how we can work that around our access doors for other people who have, our teachers and things that have access, that we don't want to have those alarms going off throughout the day. But again, it gives us a safer measure to say, yes, at this time of day, we've secured all of our doors. We are in a good state to say we are on a level 1 lockdown, and we're securing everyone that's in is in the classrooms or in the school, and everyone that's on the outside is still on the outside, and they have to follow our entrance procedures in order to get in. So that is one of our things that we're looking at doing. The good thing about it is we're able to get this funded and work within our own Columbus City schools, our buildings and grounds, to do the installation. So that helps us be able to move that faster without reaching out to different vendors and getting on their schedules to come in and assist us with that process. So we're definitely excited about that. It is a multiple phase project, okay? So it's going to take us some time because there's a lot of buildings. And if I'm saying a lot of buildings, there's a lot of doors. And we're finding that we need to do a better job of getting them all secured and tightened up. The last thing I want to share was with the Ohio K-12 school safety grant. As you're aware, we did receive $942,780 was our grand total that we received. We are targeting all of those 19 schools were identified, and we are looking at doing camera upgrades at all of those schools. A lot of our schools have analog systems that we can't get clear visual pictures of, as well as some of the parts at this point in time are no longer manufacturers, so we can't, fix those systems. So we're working into a process of those schools. Some schools will go all digital. Some of them will stay analog and have a hybrid system. So some of it will be analog and digital as we continue to move forward to meet that need. Some of the other things that we've identified in communicating with Columbus Police, we're looking at extending some of our camera views toward the exterior part of our properties where a lot of fights happen, crime happens, that we're able to help pick up some of that. Most of our cameras are facing into the school, but we're having some situations that occur outside the school, after school, so that will give us some additional camera footage of what is actually going on in those perimeter areas near our schools as well. The slide also shows you the 19 schools that were identified as part of the safety grant that will receive the camera upgrades. The grant allowed up to $50,000 per school. Interesting enough, if you saw, there was one that didn't. We had one school that only received a $42,780. So, but we're still able to utilize any additional funds to meet the need of that school's camera project. As I mentioned earlier, one of our new features that we would like to look at and I'm excited about is a collaboration with our security task force. Being a newer employee of the district, I'm learning that it is important that you have a lot of people involved in things that we need to do because it crosses over many different areas of the district. So I've been working with Mr. Odom, my boss, Catherine Mosier, and others, and just trying to build a solid team of security staff, IT, buildings and grounds, capital improvement, just have all the people at the table to sit down and talk about opportunities to improve our safety and security at our schools and making sure that we're meeting all the needs as it may touch other people, other areas of the district, and ensure that we're having all those conversations on the front end and move forward to come out to a successful resolution at the end, trying to make sure that we have a proactive approach. A lot of times things happen and we become very reactionary. So if we're looking at these things on the front end, trying to get out and ahead of it, we can be better for it at the end. We're going to be researching a lot of the best practices nationwide, and finding out what is good for us, and any other additional pressing safety issues that may come up. A lot of times I get the calls and I have to venture out and talk to other people. It's like, well, let's get an agenda. Let's sit down, let's talk, and let's meet these issues up front and try to come up with a successful resolution. So I'm very excited about that, and it helps goes with our whole total phrase in our area that security and safety is everyone's responsibility, not just one particular group. It's everyone's responsibility. Another last thing there's no slide for this, but one of the things that we're also collaborating with the Equity Department, Dr. Blue's shop, is to assist with the House Bill 123, the threat assessment teams. That is helping us look at providing appropriate trainings, and we're going to utilize our public school works to get that information out to all of our staff that need to know to help us assist with that. And I know Dr. Blue is in the room, so that is something exciting that we're looking forward to, again, to help out with that.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Questions?
We have Board Member Cole, then Vice President Vera.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you so much, Mr. Baker, for this presentation. I'm really very encouraged by the work that this administration has begun with regards to the Safety and Security Initiative. Couple things. One is, are we leveraging any data based on what we received in terms of weapons present on middle school and elementary school grounds? Are we leveraging any data to increase that evolved presence in those spaces, number one?
Yes, we're gathering weekly data related to a lot of level 2 fights and things of that nature and our level 3s, but specifically to your questions relates to guns, we are calculating the number of guns that we receive at all levels of our school.
And forgive me, I don't want to just be as specific as firearms. We can be as broad as anything that would be considered contraband or threatening, violent kind of contraband.
Yeah, we continue to talk about what is our next step. What are we going to do next? And again, the task force that we're putting together is going to help us look at what is our next measures as it relates to our middle schools and our elementaries. We did have some conversations about that earlier today, and we understand the significance and the seriousness that it is happening at some of those lower level schools as well. So as we, again, continue to roll this out, gather our data and see how well it's working for us, we'll continue those discussions and say, hey, how do we address those issues that are pressing for us at the next level or the lower level, the middle schools and the elementary schools.
Madam Interim, I look forward to any ongoing updates on where those decisions are being made and where we're looking at expanding that evolved presence, if at all. The other piece is relative, and I hope Mr. Schmeido is on the call for the City of Columbus. I hope he's present.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right, so the City of Columbus has some really cool technology, that has been introduced over the past couple years that actually tracks gunshots in a community. I'm hoping, or I'm wondering if that type of technology is present near our schools. I believe you're talking about Spot. Is he talking about? I think it is.
Spotter, yes,
Shot
we
Spot.
have-
Yes, it
we
is.
have
Thank
those
you.
right now.
Thank you for that brain freeze. I'm hoping that maybe if there isn't, that there's some presence of that technology that could also be supported by our out shooting cameras in the neighborhoods that could actually be that other added security presence for our children and our staff. I'd love to see that happen if it isn't happening already. So I'd love to get more information on that. I think that's all I have for the moment.
Okay. Vice President Vera.
Thank you. In regards to, a couple things. First being, you mentioned the security kind of vulnerability process you're going over, which I think is really important. Is there anything in regards to like procedures in terms of security vulnerability and specifically like morning drop-offs and pickups, like just really, is there going to be also kind of an evaluation of the procedures as it relates to when those doors are open and kids are coming in and out of the building? Is that something that's also being evaluated in that process?
Yes, that will be part of our evaluation process, the feedback from our security team as well as our school and building administrators, and we'll be utilizing that as another agenda item that we'll be discussing with our task force as well.
Thank you.
But I also want to reassure you that our school leaders and our school-based teams aren't waiting for another meeting to be reflective and think about where they need to adjust, pivot, refine their plans. Revisions to their school safety plans happen every day. It is something that we are always thinking about. We're always monitoring. If there's an incident, you better believe our team is reflecting and debriefing after every incident to say, what could we have done better? Where did we fall short? Where do we need additional capacity? And at that point, they would reach out. They would either ask for support. They have a member of the safety and security team as a part of that team that's helping them to review the data, review anything that's happening at the school so that they can make those decisions in real time. So I just want you to know that these decisions, it's a fluid process, and they are responding and reflecting every day in real time.
And if I may add, one of the other benefits to that too is we're talking about in real time, we get communication. We also have follow-up briefings and communication with law enforcement when they respond to incidents as well, to assure that we're keeping that open line of communication, timelines on response. What are we doing well? What do we need to do better as it relates to that partnership with them? So that is going really, really well.
Thank you. My next question is regards to how will we go about protecting and monitoring the equipment for like after school events or, in particular when we're having non-district events in our buildings, what is the process for protecting and monitoring that equipment essentially after hours or after school?
Yeah, well, the tablets and different things that you see are always secured and locked away. The units will be locked, and we have things to cover them as well as it relates to protecting the investment. So we're able to take certain items and secure them at the end of every day.
So when let's say school is out and we have, either an after-school tutoring club that's meeting, will we have staff that is still kind of manning these stations after school hours to make sure anybody who is entering the building that this same exact process that's happening in the beginning and dismissal is also happening after school?
Well, the screening will only occur during school days as well as extracurricular activities. Okay. But during after school, if there's no activities going on, our staff will not be there monitoring the system. Again, we will secure the items that we can and at that point.
Okay. And I know you mentioned students and visitors. Are our staff also going through these same systems?
Not at this time. We're just focusing on the initial phase of the students and the visitors.
Okay. And my last question, are you able just to share more information in terms of the criteria for the security task force?
What do you mean specific by the criteria?
So that's something I hadn't heard about the security task force, so my apologies if I just missed it. So just I think we want to learn.
It's actually new. It's
okay.
Something that, it's just something brand new that as I was looking at things that we would like to do in the district, not just trying to be inclusive to my office and in a small little group. It's like, hey, we need other people's ideas. We need other people at the table. You know, it's a larger process that just one office can't handle. You know, again, security is everyone's responsibility. So I want to get everybody involved that needs to be involved to make sure that, you know, that we're not missing things. You know, are we communicating effectively? You know, is there systems issues with IT, technology? You know, is it a capital improvement issue? Can we, you know, we may have to look at other things that may prevent or delay, you know, any changes that may happen in our buildings. So it's just that whole collaborative approach. And again, we haven't even started. You know, we're still putting the team together, soliciting those building administrators, first of all, last week, who would be interested in being involved in this. You know, we've already had a small group that we started with, but now we're going to expand on that process.
Thank you. You're welcome. Dr. Pierce.
Thank you so much for the presentation. So as one of the community members that actually saw the equipment out at East High School this weekend, we had an all-district all-star game. I was very concerned about the systems and the way that they were just kind of left out, unmonitored and unmanned. So what I would like to request is that you do provide the board with more information in regards to how the systems will be properly put up when they're not being used. Because we're leasing these items, we're liable for damage that happens to them. So I think that's very important. My next question really revolves around language. When you say security task force, I think what some of our community members may hear or might draw a parallel between is oftentimes these task force that we see policing our communities. And so what it sounds like to me is that you are creating a committee. So just to clarify, are you creating a committee, a security committee that is looking to see what trends and patterns are within the district, or are you creating a task force that will then be directed to take measures within our district and schools?
It's a combination, I believe, of both because, you know, once we identify what it is we need to do, certain departments might have to take the lead on assisting in creating that end goal. You know, we can look at the language and see what's the better approach for that. Again, it's new. We haven't had one single meeting yet. We just was kind of coming up with a lot of different titles for the group. So we can definitely look at the language on that.
So my final question would be then another request that you come back to the board before you all begin to take action, I would say, in schools, so that we as a board and community have an understanding of what types of actions will take place. I think given what we see happening at a national and local level, we need to be really sensitive about how some actions, some language, some names may trigger our students, community members, ourselves as board members, being a part of different communities that are often policed. Thank you.
I know that there were some questions about taking this sort of thing down into the middle and elementary schools. What are we doing now for middle and elementary schools in terms of these kind of safety assessments? As we are, figuring out if that technology is something appropriate, what are we doing in those buildings in particular, in some of the, schools that we know maybe have a higher need in safety or security?
One of the other things that we were able to do, again, through ESSER funding, we were able to purchase the handheld wands for all of our schools. So all of our middle schools as well as elementary schools have that for need, if they need to do so, not to target anyone specifically. So we have that ability to do so. As it relates to anything else, we're still processing those things.
Okay, so we are warned to be careful how we are disclosing security information. We do not want to tell our strategies about keeping things secure because that obviously harms us for people that might want to do harm. So that is our advice on council. Let's be mindful of that, and we can certainly, the board can hear these sort of things in a protected conversation, so we maintain our security. So why don't we just go ahead and pause right there on the advice of our council. This is a very important conversation. I do want to say that I, as a parent, witnessed a situation last week, and while the situation itself was scary for me as a parent picking up my child, I want to commend the grown-ups involved. What I saw was the grown-ups and the staff, the teachers, the principals, the safety team doing everything they could. And then the next day, taking those steps, doing the evaluation, even having a bush removed from the front of the school because that was a barrier in seeing. It was a sight issue. And so while these situations happen, and it was something that happened after school, out of control, our team, our safety team, our teachers, I think did everything they could possibly do. And I wanted just to say that to you and to them and know that I saw it. And it was hard to see, but I saw it and I wanted to thank them. And I went the next day and thanked them, but I want to say that publicly. All right. So we're going to go ahead and let you go, and we will definitely hear more updates about security in the right forum. Thank you, General Counsel Barnes, for keeping us, and Treasurer Bohoric, who I saw jump up.
Thank you, Mr. Baker, and thank you, President Adair. This concludes my superintendent's report.
All right, thank you. All right, we do not have a report this evening from our internal audit team. We're going to go ahead and move to the Treasurer's office. Say hello to Treasurer Bohoric.
A relieved Treasurer Bohoric. Thank you. I have no report for you this evening. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right, we're going to go ahead and go into item 7.1, which is our monitoring report. So we'll have the team who's working on that come join us at the table. I also want to have Ashley Paz, who is here, our new coach from the Council of Great City Schools. Don't worry, AJ is still involved, but Ashley is going to give us a little bit more one-on-one time. She is going to be helping us tonight through our session, as well as going to be working on individual coaching and other things that are going to be going on. So you're each going to be hearing more from Ashley as we continue down this path. And so, Ashley, did you want to say anything before we got started?
No, just hello to everyone, and thanks for having me here tonight.
Great. All right, so, Miracle?
I just want to give a quick reminder that tomorrow we did change our FAC meeting just for
Thank you.
this one engagement, that tomorrow at 4 p.m. we'll be hosting
4:15.
4:15.
Moved it from 4 to 4:15. Thank you.
Got you. That we'll be hosting Finance and Appropriations Committee.
Thank you for that update. That's back in the treasurer's part, so thank you for that. Sorry I missed your hand earlier. All right, so board members, we are going to go ahead and do the monitoring. We're going to keep the overall rules about, the high-level rules about, ensuring that we're asking questions that are going to help us understand. We are not directing. We are here to ensure that the superintendent's strategies are working. But what we are not going to be doing this evening is tracking the exact who, what, when, why, how questions. We are going to try this a different way, and we're going to respond to the needs of the board members. And we're just going to make sure that our questions are focused on understanding and understanding where we are and what your strategies are and if they're working. I'm going to allow every board member to speak. We are going to maintain the time limit of an hour, though. And so first we're going to hear, we're going to turn over to the interim superintendent for an intro, and probably Russ to walk through some things with us. But that is going to be That's going to be what we're going to do tonight. And then we also have Ashley, who is here. If we do get stuck or have questions, or she just has some coaching thing to say to us, she is welcome to do that as well. All right? All right. So thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over back to you, Interim Superintendent.
Thank you. It is our pleasure to be with you this evening to discuss Interim Goal 2.3 for our monitoring report. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Brown. We will be sharing the microphone this evening, so he's going to kick off the conversation, and then he's going to pass it back to me. Dr. Brown, welcome.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be back with you this evening. President Adair, Vice President Vera, members of the board and community, it's a pleasure to give an update. Again, we're going to be speaking about the interim goal 2.3, which is tied to board goal 2, and we're going to give an update on that today. Just as a reminder, the second board goal has to do with closing opportunity gaps. It specifically focuses on our graduation rate, and was stated the percentage of four-year graduation cohort students who complete state and district graduation requirements will increase from 81.2% of August 2020, or a decline in the benchmark due to COVID, which we certainly saw, to 86% in August of 2026. That's the board goal. And as you will recall, we came to the board with a set of interim measures that help us track whether or not we're on track to meet those board goals or not. And those act as a ladder. So historically, we had been looking at graduation rates, primarily looking at the seniors and trying to close gaps at that point in time. This extends it all the way back to ninth grade. So we look at what proportion of ninth graders are on track, what proportion of 10th graders are on track, what proportion of our 11th graders. So we're actually tracking a cohort as it moves through school. We typically use cohort and grade level interchangeably. But truthfully, when we're talking about graduation rates, we're talking about cohorts. And cohorts are defined by when a student enters ninth grade. And so when we talk about on-time rates and we talk about 11th graders or juniors, this is the third year of high school for these students. They should be juniors. Some are not if they're off track. And so we're looking at the proportion of those students who entered ninth grade 3 years ago and what proportion of those students are on track at this point in time. And how does that compare to prior cohorts, and what are we seeing as they move forward? So again, this interim goal helps us monitor students as they move through high school and allows us to make adjustments and to try to meet their needs as they're moving through high school. Each year, as mentioned before, with the closing gaps goal increasing each year to get to 86%, well, the interim goals also have to increase. And that's how we keep on track with that. So as those interim goals increase, then the expectations for the system are also increasing each year. So last year, the interim goal was that 61% of the class of 2023, our current seniors, were expected to be on track. This year, with our cohort 24 students, the ones that we expect to graduate next year, the target is 63%. So the target has gone up, the expectation is increased from what we observed last year, and that corresponds again to the expectation that that cohort will have a higher graduation rate than prior cohorts, and we're tracking to that end. So last year at this time, and well, actually it wasn't at this time, we presented this in about May, so we backed this up because there was interest in having this data earlier, getting a little closer to the end of the semester. It gives us an opportunity to have a larger on-ramp for our students and intervene earlier. Last year, when we presented this data in May, 48.6% of the 2023 cohort was on track to graduate, and that was off track, and it was well below our target at that point in time. This year, 53.2% of the cohort 2024 students are on track. It's an improvement of 4.6 percentage points from last year. It is still below target, but it is an improvement, and we've actually improved and we're closer to our target than we were last year, despite the fact that the target raised. While this is an improvement, clearly there's room to improve from here. There are things that we need to do as we move forward. But at this point, I'm going to hand it over to the superintendent to talk about the next slides. And I'm going to play Vanna.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. as Dr. Brown mentioned, our students, and this graph shows that our students have shown improvement year over year, with our current juniors performing better than last year's juniors at the same time in the academic year. This cohort is also improving from their own on-track rate at the end of their sophomore year by 7.9 percentage points. So this cohort is making steady progress. Improvements, I'll just pause there, because the next slide, we're going to talk about the improvements that we are seeing across all student groups. So we just want to acknowledge the progress that this cohort has made from this point in time to last year, And on the next slide, you'll see, again, in relationship to interim goal 2.3, this cohort, every subgroup is making progress. And this slide shows that there's an increase in performance and progress for every subgroup. So we want to talk about our ongoing plan for change and for improvement. We recognize that there is still plenty of room for improvement and progress to be made. We have a three-pronged approach based on the following theories. One, if we improve school climate, then students will attend school more regularly and will have greater academic success and access to curriculum and instruction. Number two, if we improve attendance, credit attainment will improve. And number three, if we provide focused credit recovery opportunities, more students will meet the requirements to be on track, and subsequently more students will graduate. So let's take a look at school climate. Again, that first theory that really supports making sure that our students have a connection to the school and are actively engaged. Last year, as Dr. Brown mentioned, this came before the board in May, and that's when we presented these theories of action. So it was May of last year. It has not been one full calendar year that we have been afforded the opportunity to really dig in deep with these three strategies. So again, we want to stay focused on these strategies, implementing these strategies district-wide, so we can continue to see the progress and the gains needed. We're now in the midst of the mid-year school climate survey. As all of you all know, that we have been asking for feedback from all of our stakeholders, students, staff, and families. And so this year, we do not have the comparisons, just at this point in time, we do not have the comparisons just yet for our school climate survey data from last year. Other action items completed or in progress. In the fall, the Center for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning performed a readiness assessment for the district. They looked at all of our practices district-wide and at the school-based sites to determine what are our strengths that we're currently implementing to support social emotional learning, and what are some areas of improvement. So again, we are building on, we have a readiness assessment. We are partnering with CASEL, a national organization, to help us identify and strengthen our supports for school climate. Also, as you know, AJ Crable has begun to provide training on student-based restorative justice practices, and the administrative team had an opportunity to participate in a full day of student-led restorative practices training just a few weeks ago. And every region has support in the implementation of SEL practices by social and emotional learning practitioners. There are 14 social emotional learning practitioners that are deployed to support schools in each region across the district to lift up those best practices in social emotional learning to support with our school climate initiatives. And for attendance, recognizing, again, if we improve student attendance, credit attainment will improve. You can see in this chart that our current juniors have improved attendance rates in comparison to juniors last year. Our schools have reduced the rate of severe chronic absenteeism by 7.3 percentage points this year, and students with 90% attendance increased by 7 percentage points as well. Again, this is a district-wide strategy that we are going to continue to focus on, recognizing that in this attendance space, there's, again, more room for improvement, but we'll continue to focus in this particular area. And since we met last May, the attendance office has supported a shift in focus from a punitive to prevention or early intervention model for attendance. So as you all know, in the past, we have primarily focused on what we do after the students have accumulated significant absences. Now we are focusing on that taking a proactive stance and focusing on how we can stress the importance of attendance, how we can communicate with all of our families so that they know how many days their student or their child has been absent, so that we can be more proactive and intervene before our students accumulate significant absences. Earlier this evening, we talked about the district-wide attendance campaign with Stay in the Game. That was launched just at the beginning of this school year, so that's a new campaign, a new initiative that we are certainly leveraging the support of our partners to help us with communicating district-wide and community-wide the importance of attendance. And we are also working with The Ohio State University, the Mayor's Office, and Columbus Public Health to expand our community partnerships to support our work with attendance. And our third strategy, credit recovery. We want you to know that while we want to certainly provide additional opportunities for our students, our high school students, to attain their credits, our number one focus will always be on high quality Tier 1 instruction. There is no replacement for Tier 1 instruction. So we are continuing to focus on making sure that all of our schools, all of our students, and this, we're focusing on high school, that they have a guaranteed and viable curriculum, and their Tier 1 instruction provides them with the level of rigor and supports that they need so that they can be successful. And this is consistent with the board's first guardrail, support intervention services, making sure that we have expanding our MTSS support. So we certainly have Tier 1 instruction in place, but we also have supports for in terms of MTSS for Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions, and this pyramid speaks to that. When we look at credit recovery, you can see here the number of credits that our students earned last year through credit recovery, and then the number of credits that our students have earned this year for credit recovery. By mid-year, our current juniors have completed nearly twice as many credits through recovery activities in comparison to their peers last year. And again, just following up on the progress that we have made since we've met last May to discuss these strategies, we have grown and are continuing to develop multiple ways in which students can recover credit by increasing the integrity of the credit recovery program, increasing the opportunities for our students to earn and attain credit, and we have provided multiple support options for students as they navigate credit recovery courses. So we have expanded the role of the matriculation support teams at each high school, and that team now exists for each cohort. You've heard us before talk about the senior teams. Well, now there's a team for every cohort. There's a team that's meeting to discuss the 11th grade cohort, the 10th grade cohort, and the 9th grade cohort. So there's a team in place at every school, and we have been working strategically across all regions to make sure that there are common expectations, These teams are meeting essentially to case manage the students in their cohort. What is it that they need? They are looking at credits. They're looking at, before they even look at credits, they're looking at their grades. Who's off track to be passing a class? If they are failing or missing, if there's attendance issues, so if there's, they're looking at academics, they're looking at attendance, they're looking at behavior, and then they're looking at the root causes for those challenges that the students may be experiencing so that they can identify how they need to be responsive to the needs of the students, and so we can pivot in real time. We are not waiting to the end of the quarter to have these conversations. We know, the research shows us, the further our students get behind, it's harder for them to catch up. So we have to be very proactive in this space and make sure that we're keeping track of the needs of our students and being responsive to those needs in real time. And in closing, I'm sorry, and there was just one more thing on that slide. We've also provided targeted support for specialized subgroups, particularly our ELL students and special ed students during school and during the summer, so that they have the necessary interventions that they need so we can continue to see progress for all of our subgroups. And in closing, we always come to you with an ask. As it relates to the strategies that we're implementing to support this particular board goal. And tonight we have 4 strategies that we have raised as an ask for the board for consideration. 1, we would like to continue to invite and welcome the board to champion our current attendance campaign internally and externally for all stakeholders. We would also like to extend an invitation for board members to join the OSU Advisory Board for our attendance partnership and work to ensure that our guardrails are adequately funded. And lastly, staying the course and allowing time for our schools and system to deepen our practices in these key areas. Again, these are the strategies that were identified in May, and we are still, again, very much working on implementing these strategies district-wide. Thank you.
Okay, so once again, before we I call on you for questions, I just want to reiterate what we're doing tonight. I'm not going to be monitoring the who, what, when, why, so I'm not going to be critiquing the structure of your questions. But we are keeping the principles of the monitoring session. So you should make sure that any of your questions relate to something in this report, because that's what we're doing. We're talking about this report. This is not about opinions. So let's keep our advice and recommendations out of this. This is about understanding. And make sure we are actually asking questions. While we know that our team is doing a good job and some of these are exciting, that's not what this is either. So not making statements. We want to make sure we're using our time wisely by asking questions. And I think that that's what I'll say right now, Ashley, but feel free to jump in as we get started. So I'm going to go by hands, and I see Cole, then Reyes first. So go ahead.
Thank you. I have just a few questions. I'm encouraged ongoing by some of the data that's been revealed, particularly in our growth areas. So let's keep up the good and strong work in that space. But I'd love to know what accounted for the increases in attendance. What did you see contributed to that success of that 7% increase and decrease?
Dr. Brown, you want to take that? I would say that all of our schools, all of the strategies that we have highlighted in this report, all of our schools have identified school-specific strategies to support these areas. So any school, high school, they have school-specific strategies that they are working with their building leadership team to deepen these practices, whether it's around culture and climate, attendance, or credit recovery. So I would say that the strategies that the schools are using, case managing, right, meeting regularly, keeping their eye on the needs of all students, tracking and monitoring student attendance, notifications to families. Those practices and strategies are working.
Okay. Thank you for that. I love at some point in the future to even get a little more specific when we get that opportunity so that we know maybe what's best practices. What is the evidence of culture and climate to success as well? You've got this leverage as a strategy or, you know, a theory of action, so to speak, about how to improve student achievement. What evidence have we gotten thus far that actually shows? And my question is not around whether it's effective or not. That's not my question. My question is really around what are we seeing as evidence of its strength in contributing to student outcomes?
So, again, this is a relatively new piece. We just had again, an assessment of our capacity and leaning into that. So when I think of evidence for social emotional learning practices in schools and their impact on student outcomes, there's a long literature base that across decades pointing out the value of these activities, particularly improving student-teacher relationships, and improving peer-to-peer relationships for students, and student outcomes. There's a long literature base there that substantiates the value of these activities and making school a place where students and teachers want to be and supporting student success. We're banking on that as part of it. And when one looks at, for example, attendance, attendance is often deeply related to how students perceive school. And so improving students' perception of their environment will improve their attendance as well. Again, there's a long research basis behind this that supports this. And it's something that when we were in schools last year visiting, gathering qualitative information about the experiences of our students as they return to school from the pandemic, what we were hearing consistently across our schools was that students were coming in with greater social emotional needs and that it was a greater area of focus for our buildings. And so listening to our buildings and their experiences, we wanted to focus on that as we move forward.
I greatly, again, thank you, Madam President. I have one more question. I look again forward to the opportunity to hear about exact evidence where we're seeing that work for us outside of theory and anecdote, but thank you. The last piece is, I love the fact that you mentioned the cohort teams and how they've been comprised. Who comprises those teams? What are the staff that make up these teams?
The matriculation teams. So you'll find several matriculation teams at each high school. That includes the principal, if there's an assistant principal, school counselor, social worker, if there is a social emotional learning practitioner, maybe an attendance worker, attendance specialist. Sometimes the I Know I Can advisor is a part of the matriculation team. The graduation coach is a part of the matriculation team. And it really depends, that may be the core members of the team, but there may be other stakeholders in the school community that they may invite to be a part of the team. Maybe they invite to a specific meeting, maybe not every meeting, but it's fluid, right? So we certainly recommend that there are certain stakeholders that are key members of the team, but each school community has the flexibility as well as the autonomy to decide, who should be at the table for these conversations. And then for some teams, it is the same team that's meeting to discuss each cohort. And in some schools, perhaps maybe the principal is on this committee, but then the AP is on this committee, this matriculation team. Because remember, for our high schools, they have to have 4 matriculation teams that are meeting regularly to assess and monitor the progress of each cohort. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. It does. I look forward to providing some insights on that beyond this monitoring discussion. One last thing. I'm sorry for the Columbo moment. One last thing. I've dated myself, haven't I? I'll watch it in the morning. My last question is relative to how this aligns to the seals. So you've given a wonderful illustration about, the credit aspect of this and that being a major requirement. How does this align to the seal requirement being met? And then I'm done. Thank you, Madam President.
Board Member Cole, it aligns perfectly to the seals. Excuse me. Each of the matriculation teams that are meeting, they are looking at all of the relevant data to make sure that our students are on track for graduation. So not only are they looking at credits, but they are also looking at internship hours. They begin looking at that. Students can earn their internship hours, begin working on their seals as early as 9th grade. So each matriculation team is looking at all of the data points that will ensure that our students are on track to graduate, and we have defined what that on-track criteria looks like for every school at different points in the year for each cohort. So for example, 9th grade cohort, this point in the year, you should have this many credits. For the 10th grade credit cohort, for this point in the year, we identify how many credits that they should have, and as well as, for internship hours and so forth. So the matriculation teams are looking at all of the data. Remember, it's a whole picture that we're trying to ascertain here to ensure that our students are on track for graduation.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And so that last question technically was not part of the report, but
I'm
important. Sorry. It's an important question. But let's be mindful to ask about the report. If you have other questions that are really important, capture them, and we can talk about them outside of this monitoring session. All right, so we're going to move to Board Member Reyes.
Thank you. I'm going to, there's a couple of my questions that you answered while you did the main report. And I was writing really fast, so I may not be able to read my own handwriting. But I
have that problem too.
When you're talking about the gap analysis, Table 1, % of students on track to graduate by race or service, when diving into the table, I noticed that the majority of the people that have the largest change, improvement, are non-minority students. Are we tracking the difference of why some of those strategies are working? So, for example, let's see, are gifted, are, was that my question? I apologize, it's the other way. So, scratch that, you answered that. My question there is, when you're looking at the Hispanic Latino student and you're looking at the ELL student, can those students be the same?
Are you asking, are they double counted?
Yes.
Because a Hispanic student could also be an ELL.
More likely, or even other students.
So if we look at the race groups, those are unique counts. When we start looking at special ed status, second language status, students, a Hispanic student could be in special ed, could receive those services. They could receive second language services. So, and we would expect that there's a significant overlap between our Hispanic population and our ELL population, but we have many other languages in the system and a very diverse language representation in the system. So there are many other groups that would be represented in ELL as well.
Can we put an asterisk somewhere in here to state that?
Sure.
Then my original question, because I'm reading my chicken scratch. So when I look at the % of current year goal achieved, that's where I see the highest numbers in the non-minority categories, right? So Asian at 94.8, white at 94. Are we tracking that information to ensure that that non-minority students are not being, what are those strategies that are working with the non-minority students?
Board Member Reyes, I think what you're asking
I know.
is how are we working to ensure that more of our minority student subgroups are getting closer to reaching the goal, right? And so what we have been focusing on across the district, whether we're looking at credit attainment or student achievement, right, is progress. We are looking at growth across the district. So whether we're talking to our elementary principals or we're talking to middle school principals or high school principals, we want all of our students to make growth because we know that they can, right? And so we want to be pushing all of our students to make growth. And so yes, when we are looking at this data, remember we're looking at this data district-wide. Remember, each school has a school improvement plan where they are looking at this data for their specific school. And they are looking at this data through the lens as a school level, but also for each demographic subgroup. And that's at the school level where they're able to say, you know, at this school, we have more in this subgroup that need to make more improvements or growth. We're going to lean in heavily here. I hope that answers your question.
It does in a way, because it kind of leads into the next one of, because we talk about those growths, and there are certain areas in the district that have larger populations of certain subgroups. So sometimes when you are around people that are like you tend to achieve maybe in a faster or a greater, you see greater achievements. How do we share those best practices, and are those easily accessed by members throughout the district, other than just going to a meeting?
How are we sharing best practice? The school at the
things
school
that are
level.
going well
at the school.
Yeah.
So
throughout the district.
Okay, best practices at the school. How are we sharing those across the district?
Yes.
So two ideas come to mind. What we have created at the end of each quarter is we have a data experience where we invite all of our school leaders and school-based teams to come to 3700 and we unpack the data with them. We're central office staff are standing side by side with our school-based teams to not only unpack the data, but share best practices. So we will lift up best practices in literacy, best practices in math, best practices in school climate, best practices for student attendance, and share with school leaders across all regions. This is what's working, and let's hear from those leaders and those school-based teams of what's working, and they have an opportunity to share those best practices. Similarly, we have touch points with pretty much all of our teams internally at the senior and cabinet level, where we are looking at the data and discussing best practices and then drawing conclusions and making suggestions on areas of improvement that we can share across multiple teams. And I'm sure there are other opportunities to share best practices within the regions. As you know, all of the school leaders in each region meet monthly. I know the instructional coaches meet monthly. I know that there are other groups of staff within the school that are meeting on a regular cadence. One of those touch points during those meetings is to share best practices. So I believe there are at least a few opportunities district-wide for our school-based staff to share best practices with their colleagues across regions.
Perfect. And thank you. And when you're talking about chronic absenteeism and under Table 4, you mentioned while our attendance initiatives are in their infancy, we're beginning to see improvements based on the strategies that have been implemented. How do we know it's our strategies that are working?
That's a good question. Whether or not our strategies or other strategies, i.e. a partnership with someone else or
it's no longer COVID, or it's...
Right. I think for us, the end game is we want to improve student attendance. And so we are putting lots of effort into these strategies so that we can make sure that our students are attending school regularly and engaged. We do not want any of our students to be truant. We do not want any of our students to begin racking up several days of unexcused absences. That is the worst case scenario for us. We know as school leaders, as a district, that our instructional time is the most valuable commodity that we have, and we have to make sure that our students are in school so that they can take advantage and have access to all of the amazing resources and lessons that we are planning for them. So, you know, I personally would not be offended if a student is now has decreased their chronic absenteeism rate because of strategy X over strategy Y. The point is they're in school, they're engaged, and we no longer have to have a conversation with this student or their family about improving their student attendance.
Thank you, Dr. Jam. That kind of takes me to that last question, is if we track what's working.
Yes, yes. Dr. Brown, I want to pass it to Dr. Brown to add to that.
So I'm really excited to hear you lean into this. Remember, this is all relatively new.
Correct.
And so what we're doing right now is building the foundation to begin to lean in and look at these things. So we are actively looking within the data to find highlights of best practices, to elevate those voices, to share those across the system. We have done some things to elevate the awareness of the importance of attendance, including making sure that reports are out to our building leaders so they know what's going on with their attendance on a regular basis. The school support teams know what's going on. So I think increasing awareness in and of itself has value. It's part of why we've asked you all to champion the importance of attendance, because, you know, frankly, missing 10% of school isn't that hard to do. But yet, once we get below about 80% attendance, the probability of kids being on track drops pretty rapidly. And again, not that hard to get to. So initially, we're just trying to build awareness, and we're trying to build the structures to be able to understand what's working and to get down deeply into that over time. And that's true across the board. So I just want to be clear.
Thank you. And I'm asking the question just like when the data comes back. So
Yep, and we're also still seeing a positive correlation between the students who are earning their credits and on track and their attendance. And so again, we're investing, and deepening our practices around our attendance strategy, but we're also still seeing the connection between credit attainment and in-seat student attendance.
Thank you. And then, since I want to allow for additional questions. On page 3, you talk about teachers have been and will be afforded opportunities for professional development in adult SEL. One of the asks is for us to appropriately fund. How are we tracking professional development, and do we have the appropriate expenses budgeted?
So we've been tracking professional development in this case. We know the number of teachers who participated in this and the number of schools that have been touched through teacher participation on this. The specific budgeting around that, I don't know that I can answer that question right now. But when we're talking about moving forward with our budget, the guardrails that the board outlined are imperative when we think about supporting students in the MTSS framework. That will require investment. When we talk about representing the whole child, which really leans into SEL practices, again, this will require an investment. And at a time when we're maybe a little concerned about budgets, this is a time to really think about what the board can do to help with that process and what that might mean for our community writ large.
And my last question, so I'm going to assume it's going to be really short. So in page 5, we have grown and are continuing to develop multiple ways in which students can recover credit, including, you have a lot of, how are we including parent or parent engagement in one of the strategies?
I would say that
that question's a little bit directing because you didn't mention parent engagement. So maybe why did we not include parent engagement, or did you consider parent engagement? Go ahead.
I would say that all of this work certainly comes alive and rests with our matriculation teams that I shared earlier. And a key component of the work of that team is ensuring that our parents and families are engaged. As we are doing this work, as I mentioned, it's kind of like a case management approach for each cohort to make sure that they have what they need to be successful. We are doing this work in partnership with our families.
Thank you. Totally was sure. Thank you.
Dr. Pierce, then Vera, then Brown, and I want to just alert everyone, we said we'd budget an hour for this, and that would be around 8:30.
Attendance continues to account for 30% of the variance that we see for on track. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in reading the data, this report, it seems that we have an opportunity in reading and math proficiency. So my question is, how are we going to address proficiency in reading and math beyond credit recovery to improve on track?
So, again, we found a fairly strong relationship between attendance and credit attainment. That is not necessarily a surprise. We see this across the country and just replicated it here. In terms of credit attainment, which has to do with passing classes the first time students are in them, I think one of the things we talked about before was the MTSS model in improving Tier 1 instruction. And that can also involve not just Tier 1, but Tier 2 interventions. One of the things that I heard that was being used was APEX not as a credit recovery activity, but as a standards mastery activity. So it was an opportunity for students to master content so that they pass the class the first time rather than having to do recovery after the fact. So it's a way for students to be able to demonstrate and practice content and demonstrate that they're meeting the standards for the class without having to do a recovery activity. We also think of a number of activities that have occurred. For example, with our second language students, there was a big push over the summer to expand the number of opportunities for second language students to have support during the summer program. We added 2 schools for that. Again, targeted support, and we saw a benefit for that. It was data informed. The folks from our second language department had made a point to look at the outcomes from the prior year and then to expand those opportunities so to be afforded to a larger group of our students across a larger geographic area in the city. So I think there are a variety of things that are going on. First instruction, as the superintendent said, is where we have to lean in the long run. Having everyone having access to a guaranteed and viable curriculum, standard curriculum with multiple opportunities to demonstrate learning, and a variety of tools for them to be able to do so.
In our theory of change, we indicate a number of strategies around social emotional learning, partnerships with our stakeholders such as communities and school, city year. It was interesting. I know ICANN wasn't mentioned, and I think we want to include them in this report. Sidebar. But we know that athletics also plays a role, internships and mentorships. So how are we leveraging those activities to impact attendance outside of this kind of rewards and, yeah, you did something, come so we can celebrate you because you showed up to school? How are we optimizing those opportunities?
So that is actually, again, not part of this report. A very good question. I'm going to ask that we pin that and have you all address it outside of this monitoring. Can you ask your next question?
Next question. So what impact the changes on our APEX credit recovery opportunities have on the current proficiency levels?
What impact did the changes to APEX have on our current proficiency?
So we made some changes earlier this semester.
Mid-course corrections, absolutely.
So what impact did those changes have on these levels that we're seeing right now?
Dr. Pierce, I do not have that specific data right now, but I can certainly get that information for you and share it with you.
That concludes my questions.
Thank you, Dr. Pierce. Vice President Vera.
Thank you. In regards to the data around the credit recovery, do we know why we are seeing an increase in the numbers of credit recovery? Is it I mean, I guess I just wanted to further understand. And are we why are we tracking it? We obviously are. So do we know why we are seeing such a big increase in that from this time from last year?
So, Vice President Vera, when you look at the percentage of students who are on track right now in this cohort, there are students who need to recover credit. They may not be classified as juniors. They may be in they're in the same cohort, but they may be classified as freshmen or sophomores because of the number of credits that they have. And so we provide our students, again, with multiple opportunities to attain the credit that they need so that they can, again, catch up with their cohort. And when we're looking at credits in terms of being on track, we are primarily only looking at the credits for reading and math. As Dr. Pierce mentioned, those are the two areas that we have to focus on to make sure that our students are on track for graduation. They may have earned credits in electives. They may have earned credits in science and social studies, but it's in those core content areas that we have to make sure that we are focused on and prioritizing supports.
Thank you. And then my next question, I was really, just looking through what you mentioned in terms of some additional credit, recover credit strategies. I saw that it was noted that a Saturday option would be, and I don't know if it's presently happening or it's going to be happening, but I guess I was curious as to what exactly is the implementation process for the Saturday recovery, and I guess I want to understand more about that.
I will phone a friend on that one, but I just want you to know that the premise behind that is that we are constantly looking at our strategies in real time as these matriculation teams are meeting at every high school, assessing the needs of every cohort. They are also providing us with feedback, and they're telling us we need more options for our students. Perhaps they need additional time with the teachers to provide them with the supports that they need. And so that's how the Saturday option became another consideration. But Dr. Milligan, I believe, is here to share a little bit more information if you want to know about.
So I'm not going to have her come up because
Okay.
that phoning a friend means that the question is a little bit too technical. So we can pin it.
Okay.
And Dr. Milligan can provide information to the board later.
Thank you. And then one final question that I have is, and it kind of ties back to what Board Member Cole was asking earlier, in terms of school climate. And I did hear how we're currently kind of capturing where we're at in terms of the survey. But I guess how are we going to measure advancements in school climate? And I feel like I still didn't quite hear that. If that is truly what we're indicating as part of how we're going to see improvement, how do we plan to measure actual advancements in school climate?
So we can talk about
in the correlation.
We can talk about our panorama survey. So that data specifically has a section that speaks to school climate, where there are several questions on the survey that speak to school climate. As I mentioned before, all of our schools, K through 12, have a school improvement plan that is monitored by the team, and they have been asked to create school-specific goals to support school climate. So they are looking at their panorama data for their individual school and identifying
which key area do we want to focus on for this year, and then they're working with their building leadership team to develop strategies to work on that. And then there's goals, right? So the school improvement plan is aligned to, they have their school-specific goals, and then we have our district improvement plan where we're again focusing on school climate. But I would say there are a number of measures on just the school climate survey that we could look at. I would argue that, for a school, enrollment is also an indicator of the climate. You can look at student attendance as another indicator of whether or not students have a sense of belonging with the school and feel connected to the school. If they're showing up every day, shows their level of connection and engagement and involvement in the school. And then we can also look at the restorative practices and the practices that we're implementing to support school climate and the more restorative approaches that we are using and implementing at each school in response to student incidents.
Thank you.
Brown?
Interesting. Christina took part of one of my questions, but before I get to the question on school climate, I just want to thank you already for answering one of my earlier questions about the difference between cohorts and grades. The explanation was helpful, and I just couldn't sort those out. With respect to school climate, and question about how do we measure, which was an important part of my question, I guess I'm trying to understand, what do we mean by school climate? What are the components of school climate specifically? And I think we need to understand that before we can know how we measure those things. And then the other part of my question is, from whose perspective? Is this an adult perspective about what good school climate looks like, or is this from the perspective of our students? Are we talking about physical things in the building? We're talking about relationships with people in the buildings. What is, basically what is school climate?
I'll start, and I'm sure Dr. Brown has would like to add to that, but I'll just say this is not technical. This is how a building or a school feels, and it's for everyone in that building, whether it's the student, a staff member, a teacher, custodian, bus driver, parent. It's something that you feel. Either it's working or it's not. And so when we talk about school climate, certainly we have defined that through the use of our panorama survey in a more technical term. And the survey that we use has a section on school climate, but we survey all stakeholders. There's not one stakeholder in our community that we do not ask for their input in this particular area. So our students, our staff members, that means everyone that works at a building, and our school leaders, and our families. We want to know their perception of the school climate. So this is the perception of all of our stakeholders. We value the feedback of all of our stakeholders and invite them and welcome their feedback to help us understand how does it feel in this building. Whether you're a student attending school as a ninth grader, whether you're an English teacher, a math teacher, a custodian, assistant principal, or principal, we want to know what the perception is from all of our stakeholders about the climate in the building. And it's the same for the school district. So we assess the climate of the district as well, and there are opportunities for stakeholders to provide that feedback.
I don't know that I have a whole lot to add to that.
Thank you.
Done, Board Member Brown?
Yeah, I'm still thinking about the answer, and I guess are we saying that if all of these folks feel good, that they'll show up more often? That's the theory that we're acting on?
So, and I've seen this with a variety of tools. So I've looked at different types of school climate measures over time in several systems. I think the one that we're using gives us a unique opportunity to benchmark against national norms, which is nice to see how do our students perceive their environment. I don't think you can overstate the importance of student perceptions of their school environment. How students see their relationships with their teachers, the adults in the building, really matters. How students see their relationships with their peers really matters, and it has an impact on whether or not they want to be in the school. And oh, by the way, how the kids see the school is probably not all that different from how the adults see the school. And I would agree, when you walk into a school and it has a positive school climate, oftentimes it's pretty evident when you walk through the halls. You can feel it. But this gives us a way to elevate student experience, particularly one that's sort of near and dear to me is students' sense of belonging. That, I think, speaks a lot to whether or not the school is meeting a student's needs and whether or not they feel like they belong there. I think each of us has probably been in a space in our lives where maybe we didn't feel like we belonged, and it's pretty darn discouraging. And if that happens to be school, well, that's something we need to work on. And we'll have an adverse impact on attendance, but also have an adverse impact on a lot of other academic outcomes and behavioral pieces as well.
This is about creating warm, welcoming, and inclusive environments for all of our stakeholders, whether it's students, staff members, parents. We want them to feel a sense of belonging, a sense of connection to their school.
My sense is that with this, as with many other aspects where the evidence is all correlative, that we aren't necessarily certain, or I'm not, whether it's showing up is part of what makes it feel good, or is it the other way around, which is what our strategy is.
So it is an interesting piece. So there is a large, again, literature base for this that suggests that these things will improve student outcomes. And again, when you piece that together over longitudinal studies and you put enough of them together that say the same thing, it is more supportive of a causal inference than not. But another way to say that is when I think about instruction and improving Tier 1 instruction, well, we can talk about pedagogy and content and access. We're going to also talk about classroom environment. Two sides of the same coin and two different ways to intervene to create change. And I don't care which way it goes on the causation there. Okay.
Thank you.
Fair. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Brown. Right, Board Member Beckerly.
Most of my questions have been asked. These are, they're really getting at everything that was on my mind. The readiness assessment, the Castle readiness assessment, how does that assessment, or how will we use that assessment to inform or improve inform what we do to improve school climate? Like how does that correlate?
So we invited Castle to come in and help us, for first, give us a readiness assessment so we could look at practices across the district. We know that there has been great work that's been happening in, pockets across the district. So we wanted to just kind of level set. We're using this readiness assessment and the data that they're providing us to help us inform our district-wide strategy. Ideally, we would like to create a district-wide framework for SEL practices that supports culture and climate across the district. So no matter what school you're at, what district, site, location, we can say this is our framework, our district-wide framework for social-emotional learning practices, and that certainly supports culture and climate. That's where we aspire to be. That's where we aim to go, but it's a work in progress.
Would it serve in some way as providing us a baseline?
Absolutely. It's kind of like a inventory of where we are with our practices, where we're strong, where we're weak, where there are gaps, and where we need to strengthen our practices.
Okay. I'm trying to get at what several of us have been getting at now is how are we going to know what's working and what isn't? And I'm wondering, so for example, I'll fall down from shock if our student-based restorative justice practices aren't working. But how are we going to measure that?
So again, there are school-specific goals around culture and climate. Okay. Remember, each school has a school improvement plan that's being monitored, and there are goals tied to that plan. So each school identifies an area of focus within culture and climate, an area of focus within attendance, and an area of focus within matriculation. Where do we want to double down our efforts and have a laser-like focus to make sure that we are making progress and continuing on our journey to meet the goal? And so each school will be setting school-specific, has already set beginning of the school year. Schools actually did that in May, but they're revisiting their goals and revising their goals throughout the school year and reflecting on them if they need to make changes or deepen those practices.
And then if they hit their goal or grow toward their goal, this is a silly question, but like, how are we going to know whether it's the restorative practices or the stay in the game that's working?
Well, they're two different. So, for example, for culture and climate, would be restorative practices, and we're piloting that in just a few of our high schools this year. And then for the Stay in the Game initiative would be supporting our attendance.
Or how about restorative practices versus the SEL practitioners? Because, I mean, at some point we'll have to do resource.
Yes.
So a couple of things that I'd like to lean into. Sometimes when I hear questions here, I'm sort of balancing between, well, what metric are we using?
Oh, that was mine.
Okay. Or do we want to talk about implementation process?
Yeah, I'm leaning toward metrics right now.
And so when we think about metrics, we're, again, probably leaning into changes in student perception tied to Panorama, changes in staff perception tied to Panorama, changes in attendance rates, changes in disciplinary rates. We would expect to see positive changes in academic outcomes as well. So, those are the metrics that I think we would be looking at. One of the things that I think is always challenging when I'm sitting in this chair is I hear questions about causation, and we really haven't set up research designs to do cause and effect type analysis here. So again, we're going to look, and so we have multiple treatments in some cases, so we're increasing awareness. That's a system-wide, actually a city-wide campaign. So that's going to have an impact, and trying to tease that out from a building strategy, I don't know that we're set up to do that right now. I think it's pretty clear that increasing the awareness about the importance of attendance is important because chronic absenteeism has been endemic, so we want to start to change that pattern. And at the same time, we're trying to leverage our buildings and their individual plans to tailor those interventions by building level. And I do expect that over time that we're going to elevate practices that are working and again, try to spread those over time. But as someone that used to be in higher ed, I always get a little cautious about causal inference.
Thank you, and thanks for that honest answer, because I think that's helpful, that we, it's where we are, and it's good to know.
I want to bring us back to the chart, figure 1. And so in looking at that and basically the whole context of this discussion, the mid-year from 2021 to 2022, so this year's seniors, who were 11th graders last year, they started off at the 46.6 and they made a gain of 3.9 points up to the 52.5 by end of year. So our current 11th graders who are showing mid-year are now at 53.2. So they started better. And so my question is kind of two-part. Did they start better because these strategies worked on them from 10th grade? And do we expect that another gain will be made, like that jump, the 3.9, when we look at this for the end of the year? Understanding that we're kind of, I'm hearing you say we're kind of in a wait and see on some of these strategies, when we are still quite far from the mark that our goal. And so kind of asking, you know, are we attributing these particular strategies to the success of the gains made in that class last year, and the kind of better start with the 53.2 this year? And will we see the continued growth based on this, however?
So if we go back over time and we look at each cohort over time, you're going to see that on average, those have gone up someplace between 2 and roughly 5%. So I would expect that we're going to see that pattern repeat, that we're going to see an upward bump towards the end of the year. Will it be enough to get to 63%? I'm skeptical. That would be a pretty dramatic change in inflection from where we've been before. Again, I'd like to point out this is the highest sort of midpoint since the inception of the pandemic, and that these students actually made a significant gain from where they ended last school year. So this cohort, you know, is doing something different in the first half of their year compared to where they ended last year.
So that's right.
I would attribute that to the fact that we have now asked schools to plan for every cohort. And so we see then a bump here. And we see more kids doing credit recovery. It's not an enormous number. If you look at, 200 credit, out of 2,200 kids, this really isn't an enormous number of people participating in credit recovery. But we did focus on credit recovery and asked people to increase that to get kids back on track instead of waiting to the senior year. So I do think that this is early promising evidence that these strategies are focusing buildings in a way that are helpful to our kids, and ones that I think we should continue.
They are, yes, and we are seeing growth, which we celebrate. However, what are your thoughts about these strategies in overcoming the gap? Because we still, in the benchmarks we have set, we are still quite below where we need to get to, because the benchmark just keeps getting higher as the cohorts come into 11th grade. And so kind of what is your analysis at this point? Because what I'm hearing you say is just wait on these strategies, give them time. And I feel the board saying, but are these really working in a way that are going to really accelerate? Because we aren't accelerating at a rate to meet the goal.
We share your sense of urgency. First, I want to note that with each cohort, they're getting stronger. I want to remind you that this cohort, remember when our students matriculate to high school, that 9th grade year is the most important, critical year for high school students. How they perform, how they transition to high school, how they embrace the study habits that they need to, and begin to demonstrate the skills, the soft skills that they need to transition to secondary as a high school student is critical. And so this cohort, again, our 11th grade cohort, was significantly impacted. Their transition to high school was significantly impacted by the pandemic. So I want you to know that we certainly share your sense of urgency. We will continue to double down on, again, case managing. So, for example, at each school, we are setting expectations that every school has to make sure that they have a laser-like focus on all cohorts. But what does that mean? We are looking at early warning indicators for every cohort and every student on a regular basis so that we can make sure that we're responding to that data in real time. That means if you're, on track to fail a specific course, whether it's reading or math, we can intervene before they even fail the course to make sure what supports are needed so that we can be responsive to the students and support them on their journey. So I just want you to know that, again, continued focus in this area, level setting, high expectations for the school improvement planning process, as well as the matriculation teams at all of our high schools, but also a high amount of support, not only for our staff, but also for our students.
And Dr. Chapman, everything that you just mentioned there, do you believe it is captured in one of the theories of action you've advanced for this particular goal?
Everything that I've mentioned, is it captured in?
In one of, you've given us 3 theories of action on how you and the team are working on this, which we've dug into. But the things that you just mentioned right there, do you feel like those are captured in the 3 strategies, or is that a different strategy?
It's not a different strategy. I'm speaking to the structures that are in place to make sure that these strategies are the focus for every school, every team across the district. So it's happening. But these are, for example, because remember last spring when we talked about these strategies, we were at a perfect place because our schools were just about to develop their school improvement plans. So for the first time, we had an opportunity to align our board goals with our district improvement plan and our school-based and school improvement plans. Remember, the year before, when we established the board goals, the school improvement planning process was already underway. So this was an opportunity, again, that structure, we didn't name as a strategy that all school improvement plans will be aligned to these goals, and schools will create school-specific improvement plans to monitor these goals throughout the course of the year. So I saw that as a structure, a system-wide structure that we are naming. School improvement planning is not optional. We have to do it. We're not doing that in response to this goal. It is what we've always done. It's not a new strategy, but the alignment to the goals and having the goals aligned to the district and the school improvement plan is new.
So you believe these 3 strategies, theories of action, they are going to continue to demonstrate growth at this point? These are the only 3 you feel the board should really be digging into?
Yes. There are other strategies that our school, these are the only strategies that we want to focus on for this particular goal, yes.
All right, thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Ashley. She's actually going to help us do our evaluation and give us some comments.
Hi.
Hi.
So I want to be clear that as I am monitoring or evaluating your monitoring session, what I'm watching for is the quality of your questions. So are they SMART questions? That means, are they strategic in nature? Are they measure focused? That means, does the question reference specific metrics data that is in the monitoring report? Are they ask oriented? That means, is the question open-ended or is it a yes, no, multiple choice question? Is it results focused? Does the question focus on understanding data rather than sharing opinions? And is it time bound? Does the question focus on past action performance rather than future actions? I'm really excited to share that as you all have been talking, I've been typing diligently into a little spreadsheet that I have here that kind of tallies everything up for me. So the vast majority of your questions were in fact strategy focused. And in fact, every single one of them, well, actually that's not true, all but just a couple were actually results focused. And all but just one or two were actually time bound. So you are moving in a really good direction with the quality of your monitoring reports, or the quality of your monitoring questions. And the conversation that you've had has it's really been focused on understanding what has happened, understanding what we understand now, and very little, if any, conversation that has been forward focused, talking about what is going to happen, what needs to happen, what will happen. So I give you a pretty solid B plus for this monitoring session. And after tonight, after I have a moment to actually look and digest the questions a little bit longer, I'll be able to provide a more in-depth report that I'll share out with everyone that really breaks down the quality of your questions and then how smart they actually are.
All right.
Are there any questions about
Are there
that?
any questions for Ashley? No. Thank you so much, Ashley. You have a question?
Thank you.
No, I have a question for us. Are we still monitoring?
For us? Okay. Thanks, Ashley.
Bye-bye.
Dr. Pierce?
So while we got the B plus, the B in monitoring session, we have yet another monitoring report where we see that only 30% of the on track is being explained by the theories of change. I would encourage us to think about how we as a board can change our structure, the monitoring that we're doing, so that it opens up the conversation around other theories of change that can impact the variance that we're seeing in our students' proficiency level. If we look at our gifted students, for example, 71% are on track. How much of that is really being impacted by attendance versus the structure of our gifted programming, our academics that are actually happening in the building? When we look at our homeless population, 22.9% are at proficiency level. How much of that is being impacted by attendance and the delivery of resources and curriculum that they really need? And so while I appreciate Dr. Chapman and Dr. Brown for bringing this data to us, I think the theory of action goes far beyond simply attendance. That only explains 30% of the variance. We need to get at that 70%. We need to understand, is there a correlation? And I agree with you. Finding that correlation isn't going to be easy all the time, but we can't just regulate ourselves to operating in a deficiency model. The way this monitoring session is set up right now, we're always looking at what the interventions are going to be. We're not providing our administration with an opportunity to think proactively, innovative, and creatively about how we can get credit attainment.
And I think those are really fair points, and something that I think you're right. We've talked about, we have monitoring, but is there opportunity for discussion and just dialogue, which is not monitoring? So, that is something that we can look at in the structure, because we're going to restructure our agendas, allowing for more of that dialogue and input to the administration. All right, thank you, team, for that report. Thank you, board members, and thank you, Ashley, who is, I think, still on, but gone. All right, we're going to move to item 7.2, which is a resolution in order of termination. I will move to approve the resolution in order of termination. Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Beckerly?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Dr. Pierce?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Vice President Vera?
Yes.
President Adair?
Yes.
That motion carried.
Okay, we are in our consent agenda this evening. Our consent agenda consists of items 9.1 to 24.10. Are there any items a board member would like to remove for separate consideration? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Are there any items you would like to discuss? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Dr. Pierce?
With the exception of 12.4, which I am abstaining, yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Vice President Vera?
Yes.
President Adair?
Yes.
Ms. Beckerly?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. We have a new agenda item, which is our consent agenda 2. And before we vote on this, I'm going to have our council come up and tell us why this is here, what it means, and the impact of this section of our agenda. Welcome to the table, General Counsel Barnes.
Good evening. I'll start with a little background and then talk about why we have the resolutions on the agenda this evening. First, the Franklin County Auditor has what's called a Board of Revision that hears complaints on the market value of property. And the Board of Revision can change that market value based on evidence presented to it. The district participates with the Board of Revision process to protect its real property tax base, which, as you all know, is a primary source of our funding. And we also participate to protect the interest of all of our constituents. The district files original complaints seeking increased values when property used for commercial, industrial, or other income-producing investment purposes are substantially undervalued by the Franklin County Auditor in relation to the sale price of the property. Of note, I did mention residential properties. Under recent law, new law, before the district can file a complaint with the Board of Revision, it must first have approval from the board through resolution. Statute provides that the board must approve the filing of a complaint on each property before the complaint can actually be filed. Furthermore, under the new law, if the district receives an adverse decision from the Board of Revision, it can no longer appeal to the Board of Tax Appeals. In contrast, the commercial property owner can file an appeal to the Board of Tax Appeals. So what happens when a property is undervalued? Each property that is undervalued results in an increase to all other property owners' tax rates. This means that an unwarranted reduction in one owner's property or the retention of a currently unwarranted lower value results in all other owners' taxes to be higher than they would otherwise be. As such, the district's participation in the Board of Revision process helps lower the real property taxes paid by the vast majority of its property owners. Neither unwarranted reductions in value nor the retention of unsubstantiated lower valuations serve the district's interests, nor do they protect the common interests of the district's citizens. Those are the reasons that the resolutions are before the board this evening.
Thank you. So this consent agenda consists of items 26.1 to 26,192. Any member may ask for an item to be removed for separate consideration. Seeing none, hold on.
Ask a question.
Let me do the motion first.
Okay.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any questions or concerns? Board Member Beckerly.
I was with you, Mr. Barnes, on everything until the reason they're here. These are we're pursuing that theory that you just said, that you laid out. in these complaints. Is that what this is?
Yes, we're to protect, in short, it's to protect the district's property tax base.
Okay, I got it now. Never mind. Thank you.
Other questions? Please call the roll.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, sorry, Dr. Pierce?
So, just a legal question. I don't even know if I should ask this publicly or
We'll see. Ask
offline.
it, and then he'll tell you.
But given somebody like myself who's at The Ohio State University who may own property outside of our name, how would one then know whether or not I'm in a conflict of interest issue voting on these individual properties that may be owned or held by Ohio State or one of its entities?
I'm sorry.
She said it's a good question.
I was just side
Okay. Okay. The vote on this resolution is simply to file a complaint. It's not dispositive.
Okay, so I can vote to file the complaint, but if we move forward and
The
you'll check into
district,
that.
I mean, that's actually a good question for all of us because
Isn't
there's
most
so
property
many-
owned by the Ohio State University governmental property and therefore on the tax exempt duplicate?
Good point.
I don't know.
I
medical
think I
center
do
might be
have
doing all
someone
kinds
in
of
the
stuff.
audience who can answer that question better than I, and
It might clear you.
Okay, clear me.
this is our, just for purposes of introduction, Mark Gillis is our tax counsel.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yes, the vast majority of it would be tax exempt. Clarify what the relationship would be where we might have a conflict.
I'm saying if they hold property with a partnering entity or I think about our medical center that we just built off of Ackerman Road. It started with an A, Annadale or something like that. And
But a partnership with
with any entity, I just want to make sure.
She has a personal conflict, so
Yes.
she's trying to ensure that she is, because normally she abstains from anything that the Ohio State University could be associated with.
I mean, there are any number of possibilities. I mean, I can't really speak to that specific one without talking with you specifically about it. And with 192 of them, I don't know if there's one in here with Ohio State. There's a possibility that there's one there. But
Well, there isn't one there that specifically names Ohio State, but if it is in partnership with somebody else, do you see what I'm saying? If I'm not sure, should I just, I'll just abstain from them all.
Well, it's the ownership of the property that we're dealing with and the valuation as to who would pay the real property tax.
Okay. So as long as I just don't see the Ohio State University, we're going to take it as we're good and clear.
I think so.
All right, let's go.
Okay, but I think that's a good question about process and just ensuring ethics checks for any of us, because we should review it, that's part of our job, but we need some help sometimes. Do you want to say something?
Well, I was just going to say, Board Member Pierce, I believe the project you were referencing is the Andelin project with Nationwide Children's Hospital and Ohio State University. It's on their property. It's a for-profit entity, therefore it did go on the tax duplicate, and they came to us and they granted a tax abatement. So there's not a whole lot you can do about that. But
Yeah, it
it's
wouldn't
a
be on.
for-profit venture, and when it becomes a for-profit venture, it goes on the tax duplicate.
But it's not currently on this list, so right now I don't have to worry, but in the future I may have to worry once the abatement runs out.
We all have to worry in the future.
You know what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I'll work with them on a better process, Tina.
Okay.
All right.
And moving forward, there will not be as many on.
And it's only as many, you told me, like once or twice a year. This isn't a normal everyday agenda item.
We hope it to be once a year.
We hope it to be like
With
that.
a larger number, there may be some, another one with a smaller number on it.
Because the legislation changed to impact it for us to get it like this, because we have to report it this exact way.
Yeah, this is a requirement by law.
Absolutely.
The way that
I
it is
expect
even
to see more
on
of
our
this.
agenda. It must be a separate consent agenda item. Okay. This is the first time. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you. All right, call the roll.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Dr. Pierce?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Vice President Vera?
Yes.
President Adair?
Yes.
Beckerly?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
That motion carried.
Okay, and then we have 26, which is consent agenda 2. What did we just do?
That's what you said. Just did.
25 was referencing all the individual.
Oh, sorry. Yes,
consent
I'm
agenda
sorry.
too.
It was, thank you. It's just consolidated on there. I was confused. All right, yes, we've done that. Okay, we have no one here to speak to us on non-agenda items, so the next thing on our list is executive session. Vice President Vera has the motion.
I move that the Board of Education recess into executive session per section 121.22 G1 Ohio Revised Code to consider the appointment, employment, or compensation of public employees.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion, a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Pierce?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Vice President Vera?
Yes.
President Adair?
Yes.
Ms. Beckerly?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. We will now adjourn to executive session. This meeting will stop being televised, but we will adjourn the public meeting from this space. So thank you, staff members who were in attendance today. Thank you, audience members who were here. Board members, please be back into executive session room by 9 o'clock.